everyone. We wanted to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit about an exciting new opportunity within the Diocese of Christ Our Hope for postgraduate continuing education for clergy and lay people. We've started this program with Trinity Seminary called Ad Fontes, to Back to the Fountain, and it is a cohort-based program that offers courses in different areas of interest. There is a patristics track. The first one that's gotten started is on the church fathers and mothers. Also, there'll be tracks in Anglican divines. There'll be tracks in catechesis and discipleship and development and history of catechesis and practices of catechism. Different tracks that will be emerging in the near future. But we did a pilot program. We're actually in the middle of a pilot program uh, studying Gregory of Nyssa. And I wanted to interview a couple of guys who are in the program, where there are two cohorts, and one, Reverend Justin Hendricks from Church of the Incarnation in Richmond, is in the evening cohort, and Reverend Eric Cotting from Church of the Incarnation in Harrisonburg, excuse me, is the in the afternoon cohort. And so I'd like to get a little bit of feedback from both of them, just as a way of letting the larger diocese know what this opportunity is, and also hopefully stirring up some interest and participating as the program continues and actually grows. So, Justin and Eric, why did you sign on in the first place? Why did you jump into this when you heard about a postgraduate education opportunity, period, and about one specifically in the Church Fathers?
I'll jump in. So towards the tail end of my undergrad, I had an opportunity to take a 2-hour class in Greek on Melito of Sardis. But outside of that small class, I hadn't directly studied the Church Fathers. And I love the idea of ad fontes, back to the sources, and thought it would be invigorating to hear a voice from another time. Voices from another time. And I was also really attracted to the opportunity to connect with other clergy in our diocese. And the course included a 2-day retreat at the beginning, which was really fantastic.
Yeah, I think for me, I came from a background that didn't have a lot of exposure to the Church Fathers. So when I had my first real exposure to them in seminary, I found them very interesting, but also really mind-boggling. And so it's been really wonderful to get to revisit them, but maybe a little bit better equipped to engage with them. I think it's really helpful to have a guide just for that very reason, right? Someone who can actually help you to not just kind of understand their sound bites, but to actually really immerse yourself in their logic and to learn to try to think and to imagine the way that they do.
I'm in the course as well, and my motivation, I went to seminary 163 years ago or something like that. And I went to a school that did not even barely acknowledge the existence of the Church Fathers. And so I've always felt it was a completely missing component of my education. And as I moved into the emeritus situation where I'm only working about half time or 2/3 time, I wanted to do some things to begin to learn. And the first thing I wanted to do was jump into a systematic study of the Church Fathers. I tried to do that on my own over the course of the years, and I just didn't have the discipline to do it, to really study through in any consistent way. Plus the fact they're hard enough and challenging enough, and I mean that in a good sense, that I need somebody like Justin, like you said, a guide to really help me figure out how to do this well. So that was a lot of my reasoning too. So Eric, you mentioned the retreat at the beginning. How did the course begin? What was this retreat about, and how has that affected the sense of being in the cohort for you, and Justin, for you too?
So I think we had about a dozen students. The class is currently running with 2 cohorts. And so the retreat at the beginning was at Trinity Anglican Seminary near Pittsburgh. I had never been there. We enjoyed a dinner at the president's home and an opportunity to spend the better part of a day and a half together. It included morning and evening prayer, meals together. So um, the life together experience of getting to meet one another face to face, knowing that the bulk of the course going forward from that point would be online. And I think most of us have acclimated to a lot of online interaction, but it really helps if you have prior context with the people that you're in class with. And that's proven to be true here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ability to meet online really has been a gift, but there's just a lot relationally that carries over into those online meetings that really began with the in-person gatherings. I think there's also just something positive to being able to say, we're going to read and talk about Gregory of Nyssa, and for 36 hours, that's really most of what we're going to do. And so there's a real thickening just to our ability to think and to discuss that comes from that too, and to be able to do it in the same room.
Justin, how's the teaching experience been for you? I mean, the actual process of the teacher and being taught and so on and interaction. Has the teacher is this a good system for a good teacher to work with?
Yes, I think so. I think one of the, I don't know, maybe concerns, I guess there are concerns on both sides that this could be too thin and maybe not worth the time. And then the other concern would be like, this is actually too technical and too jargony and therefore hard to follow. And I think it's really struck the balance of those two well. So it's been rigorous, but also the Thomas has been able to, I think, provide the context and the background information that we need to be able to think a little bit in the way that Gregory thinks. And so it's been good to have that balance of interaction where we talk about the text, but to be able to kind of work with a shared set of terms and a shared grammar that I think he's been able to provide for us very well.
Eric, what is a preparation for a particular course? I mean, class. I mean, the class is meeting every 2 weeks by Zoom, and I think there's going to be about 8 classes plus the opening retreat. What does it mean to prepare for a class? What does it mean to participate in a class?
Sure. So there's readings assigned in advance, as you would expect, and they're manageable. They certainly vary in length, and so some weeks require more time reading than others, but generally speaking, one of the students in the class is assigned to write and distribute paper or reflection on that class ahead of time. And so to prepare your reading, some work from Gregory or works from Gregory of Nyssa in this case, and then reading a reflection paper written by one of your colleagues in the class. And then when we come together, Thomas Breedlove guides our discussion, often begins with some broader reflections. And in some cases, we really begin with the paper and the student reading it or summarizing it. We've all read the paper, and that often is the main launching pad into the material.
So it's manageable in terms of the workload for you. And Justin, you've already done your paper. How was that a manageable process for you?
Yep. Yeah. There's the opportunity to kind of go off into as many weeds as you'd like. But really the basic idea is to essentially summarize and sort of distill the reading that we had read together. And so I found it to be helpful, even if I hadn't shared it, it was a helpful way to process the reading itself.
So what is one thing that has stood out to you? We're not through with the class, but what have you learned so far in terms of both maybe content and also just how an ancient Cappadocian father thinks and approaches wrestling with the truth of God? What are you learning here? Eric, what jumps out in your mind?
One of the things that I love is when Gregory goes off on something you just wouldn't have expected. And you're like, this is a voice from another time. And one of the images that has really stuck with me is when I think it's from the book On the Soul and the Resurrection. And he's talking about the fact that God is so generous that in order to deal with his abundant generosity, he made us as vessels that could receive from his goodness. And so it's a beautiful image to start with. But then he imagines how we grow larger and larger, infinitely larger, as we receive from his goodness, and we become the kind of people that are able to receive more and more kinds of goodness. And so you have this just physiological kind of picture of getting bigger. I've read and studied and taught a lot about spiritual formation, but never quite had this idea of an ever increasing vessel that was brought about just because God needed some place to put his infinite goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, some of us know a whole lot about getting bigger and bigger all the time. Justin, what have you, something jump out to you?
Yeah, I've enjoyed the way that the way that he treats what it means to be a human person. And I think both in the sense of the depth of our failures, right? When our hearts orient ourselves towards the things of the flesh or the things of this world and away from God, away from his purity. But also the profound dignity that it is to be made in the image of God and to be joined to his son so that we can grow more in his likeness. I think Gregory really draws out beautifully the, I don't know, there's a profundity to that is kind of hard to put into words. I think it's easy for us to lose track of that, maybe for that reason, but easier for us, I think, to dwell on the depravity and the need for redemption. And Gregory also reminds us of the goodness in which we were created. I was grateful for that.
For me, I've learned a lot, both in terms of content. Gregory is famous for the development of Trinitarian theology, and we're just kind of getting into the depths of that right now in the course. But he also, from a perspective of how he approaches, and I think this is part of what the church fathers offer us, he just approaches scripture differently. We, as in our world today, we look at scripture almost like scientifically. What does it say? And let's break it down. And the church fathers looked at it as a transactional process that God was literally speaking to them. And they weren't nearly as concerned about whether or not, there were two angels in the tomb or one angel outside the tomb or anything like that. That didn't bother them at all because they believed that whatever the text said was inspired and that God was speaking to them. They also saw connections in ways that I think are unusual and beyond my expectation. And I'm eager to learn more and more about how they saw connections through the whole of Scripture. There's just a weaving together that is more beautiful and more profound and unusual than I've ever experienced. And I've been studying biblical theology my whole life. And so it's been really, really interesting for me. Um, I've also found it interesting that a lot of what Gregory talks about in terms of the transformation, Christian maturity, is growth in virtue. Growth in virtue is a major issue for him, and I have never encountered anyone who I thought really was zeroed in on growth of virtue as the development of Christian character in the same kind of way. But years ago, I studied Second Peter chapter 1 and did some work on virtue. And I actually was thrilled to find out that Gregory is way ahead of the game on what I learned there in terms of how true Christian virtue literally means becoming more and more controlled by love, really fundamentally controlled by love. So it's just a different way to talk about discipleship. Eric, you mentioned about formation of, Christian formation and the formation of people into people who love God and love people really is the end result of virtue. And that's what he really is emphasizing. Um, would you do it again? Do you want to do it again? We got some more classes coming up. I think Arrhenius of Lyon, and they got Maximus coming up and some other guys coming up. And then we've got some other tracks coming up too. Would you do it again?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
It's been great.
So they're going to offer about 8 courses, I think. The idea is to offer 8 courses in patristics, and if you take 6, I think you get a cohort, a certificate from Trinity, some sort of certification. You can also actually add a little another step at the end of the course, and do a little bit of a different take on the assignments and produce a higher level paper and get credit for D-Min at Trinity. So there's a couple of different ways to use these courses. I'm happy just to be learning because I don't need another degree, but it's been a really wonderful process of learning. Ernie, you are sitting here hosting us and you're hearing all this. What does this sound like to you?
Well, it sounds like the kind of meat that I long for, and I hear from the pulpit from time to time, and from varying other locations. But I would love to sink my teeth into this type of teaching. It sounds wonderful.
Well, guess what? It's not just for clergy. We've got 3 lay
Oh,
people in this cohort.
okay,
So you're welcome to next
that's
time.
great. Yeah,
I think this is enough, guys. Don't you think this is enough that I think we've given a picture. Hopefully people are getting a picture of how exciting this has been.
yeah, I think you have. Yeah,
We are,
I want to learn more about Gregory big time.
Yeah.
Do some Googling on him.
well, we haven't got the details worked out, but the diocese is and we're gonna encourage more people to join. I think we got about 10 people from our diocese and would love to see another 10 or 15 in each course because we're gonna be doing multiple courses, or they're gonna be doing multiple courses going ahead. So lots of opportunity here to take a course a year or 2 courses a year. And also the diocese is trying to find out whether or not they can offer some stipends for those who can't afford it, and to give at least half price off. It's $1,000 a course per person, which I find to be an incredibly good value for what we're doing here. So anyway.
Great.
Can I throw out one more of my favorite images that stuck with me from Gregory? You all will remember, I think it's from the On the Image of God, where he's talking about hands as a necessary part of being rational. Yeah. And it's a fascinating section where he basically like, thankfully, we're not like dogs or other 4-footed creatures that need mouths that are so constructed that they can be burdened with the acquisition of food. But the Lord gave us hands, so our hands can deal with food. Therefore, we can have soft and pliable mouths that are actually worthwhile for.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
I think
we froze.
Oh, wait, let's read it. Soft and pliable mouth.
It's a different organ.
The
We
irony
can also
that-
listen.
Can you say that again, because you froze on us, Eric? That soft and pliable mouth, that.
He said at the very end, our mouths are always, my point was at the end is that he said these senses are separate. We have a mouth for talking and ears for hearing, and it's a good thing because our mouths are always talking, and therefore our ears can still be hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I look at my dog now differently, who has he even has one section he talks about, thankfully our lips are attuned to talk. I mean, our tongues are attuned to talking. They're not hanging out of the side of our mouths like a dog.
That's right.
So you're reading this and you're like, who would say this?
That's funny.
Gregory in the 300s would say it.